When you understand men psychologically, you'll never chase love again because you finally recognize that chasing destroys the very thing you hope to build. Men are not moved by pressure, pursuit, or emotional urgency. They are moved by the rare presence of a woman who knows her value so deeply that she refuses to collapse into desperation. When you understand this, something inside you shifts. You stop bending yourself into smaller shapes just to be noticed, because you realize a man cannot appreciate what he didn't earn the right to keep. You stop explaining your worth, defending your boundaries, or softening your truth, because the moment you do, you teach him that your self-respect is negotiable. And nothing kills attraction faster than a woman negotiating her value. A man's psychology responds to strength, not aggression, but groundedness. He pays attention to the woman who is not trying to be chosen, but is choosing her own path with clarity, dignity, and emotional discipline. When you stop chasing, you don't become cold, you become selective. And selectivity is the most powerful form of feminine influence. It forces a man to rise, to step into responsibility, to bring effort, consistency, and intention. Men step up when they feel the possibility of losing something extraordinary. They step back when they sense they already have you without effort. When you understand male psychology, you stop seeking reassurance, because you finally see that reassurance is a currency that only insecure people overpay with. You stop giving a man access to your emotions before he's earned access to your trust. You stop offering loyalty to a man who hasn't shown reliability. You stop asking where things are going because you allow his actions to speak for him. And those actions tell you everything, whether he's serious, whether he's capable, whether he's aligned with the future you want. Understanding men psychologically doesn't make you harder. It makes you wiser. It makes you see that a man's interest is loud when it's real and silent when it's not. It makes you walk away the moment inconsistency appears, not because you're heartless, but because you refuse to build your life around uncertainty. It teaches you to hold your boundaries firmly, because men respect women whose standards hold even when emotions rise. It teaches you that silence can be more powerful than argument, and distance more powerful than explanation. When you understand men, you stop interpreting mixed signals as mystery and recognize them as lack of intention. You stop hoping potential will turn into commitment. You stop believing that if you just give more, he'll suddenly wake up and realize your worth. No. A man realizes a woman's worth when she stops giving freely what he hasn't invested in. Your presence should feel earned. Your attention should be valuable. Your emotional availability should be matched, never given blindly. And the moment a man feels he has to rise to meet your level, he begins to respect you. He begins to value you. He begins to pursue you. Because psychologically, men chase what feels rare, not what feels desperate. They cherish what is stable, not what is chaotic. They commit to what demands responsibility, not what tolerates neglect. When you understand this, you stop trying to prove yourself. You stop letting fear guide your decisions. You stop entertaining men who offer fragments of affection while keeping their options wide open. You start building your life, your purpose, your growth, your peace so solidly that any man who wants to join it must bring strength instead of confusion. You start choosing men who choose you clearly, loudly, and consistently. You start walking away when behavior doesn't match words. You start trusting your intuition instead of your attachment. And that's where your power rises. Because when a woman truly understands male psychology, she no longer chases love, she attracts it by embodying a version of herself that refuses to settle for anything less than mutual respect, effort, and emotional maturity. She becomes the woman a man doesn't want to lose. She becomes the woman who commands admiration without demanding it. She becomes the woman who inspires commitment, not through pressure, but through presence. And once you step into that level of self-respect, everything changes. Love stops being something you run after. It becomes something that rises to meet you. Understanding male psychology frees you from chasing validation and anchors you in self-respect. Because once you see how men truly operate, you stop wasting emotional energy on fear, insecurity, or desperation. You realize that most of the anxiety women feel in relationships comes from not understanding how men process attraction, commitment, and effort. When you finally grasp this, everything sharpens. You understand that a man's interest isn't decoded through his words, it's revealed through consistency, responsibility, and pursuit. You understand that validation seeking is the fastest way to lower your value in his eyes, because it signals that you doubt yourself. And when you doubt yourself, he feels no urgency to value you either. Male psychology is simple. Men respect what stands firm and question what wavers. They invest in what feels rare and take for granted what is always available. They move towards strength and pull away from chaos. They chase what feels grounded, not what feels dependent. And once you internalize these truths, you stop giving your energy to men who offer you half interest, half love, or half effort. You stop trying to convince a man to care, because you realize the moment you start convincing, you've already lost your power. You stop trying to impress a man, because a man who is truly aligned will notice you without being pushed. You stop shrinking yourself to be liked, because the right man is drawn to a woman who stands firmly in her identity. Understanding male psychology teaches you that a man does not fall in love because you sacrifice yourself. He falls in love because you protect your self-worth. He does not commit because you give more. He commits because he feels the weight of who you are. He does not stay because you tolerate neglect. He stays because you inspire him to rise. And this shift liberates you. You no longer feel the need to chase because you finally understand that chasing reverses the natural polarity of attraction. A man is meant to move toward what he values. When you chase, you remove his responsibility to show up. When you overgive, you remove his motivation to invest. When you make yourself too available, you remove the mystery that fuels desire. When you lower your standards, you remove the structure that teaches him how to treat you. But when you stand anchored in self-respect, everything changes. Suddenly, you become the woman he pays attention to, not because you demand it, but because your presence commands it. You become the woman who is not easily impressed, and that makes him want to bring more. You become the woman whose boundaries are clear, and that forces him to behave with intention. You become the woman whose silence carries weight, because silence from a woman of value is a message no man takes lightly. You become the woman who does not chase, because she has already chosen herself. Male psychology responds to certainty. When you are clear about what you expect, he becomes clear about what he must offer. When you remain calm instead of emotional, he sees you as someone he must protect, not someone he must escape. When you walk away from disrespect the first time, he learns that losing you is a consequence he is not willing to risk. And when you stop basing your choices on fear, you become impossible to manipulate. Understanding male psychology gives you the power to interpret his behavior without illusion. Inconsistency is no longer confusing, it's clarity. Emotional distance is no longer a mystery, it's a message. Mixed signals are no longer exciting, they are a warning. And you trust these warnings because you no longer need a man's validation to feel worthy. Instead, you choose the man who chooses you with action, effort, and presence. You choose the man whose interest doesn't fluctuate with his mood. You choose the man who communicates, not the man who keeps you guessing. You choose the man who respects your boundaries, not the one who tests them. You choose the man who brings peace, not chaos. And here's the deepest truth. When you understand men, you finally understand yourself. You understand your patterns, your triggers, your wounds, and your worth. You understand that love is not something you force. It is something you attract when you stand in your power. You understand that your value is not measured by who desires you, but by who respects you. You understand that self-respect is not just a concept, it is your greatest filter. And once you have this filter, anything less than genuine effort becomes unacceptable. Because the woman who understands men psychologically is the woman who no longer settles for emotional crumbs. She no longer tolerates indecision. She no longer negotiates her standards. She no longer betrays her intuition. She no longer confuses attention with intention. She no longer confuses desire with readiness. And she no longer confuses potential with partnership. She becomes the woman a man must rise to meet. She becomes the woman he cannot replace. She becomes the woman he cannot take for granted. And she becomes the woman who never again chases validation because she has become the source of her own. A man values what stands grounded, not what collapses under emotional pressure, because stability is the currency of respect in the male mind. When a woman remains centered instead of spiraling, decisive instead of panicking, composed instead of pleading, she shows him something rare. She shows him that her emotions do not control her identity. And this is where attraction deepens. Men are instinctively drawn to the woman who can hold her structure when tension rises, because it signals maturity, strength, and self-respect. Emotional pressure exposes character. It reveals whether a woman is driven by fear or anchored by principle. And once a man sees that you cannot be shaken by his inconsistency, manipulation, silence, or emotional tests, he realizes that you're not someone he can toy with, you're someone he must rise to meet. Groundedness does not mean being cold. It means being unshakable. It means you feel everything, but you don't react impulsively. You hear his words, but you measure his actions. You notice his behavior, but you aren't desperate for his validation. You give presence, not panic. You give listening, not begging. You give clarity, not emotional storms. And in doing so, you set a standard he cannot ignore. Male psychology is simple. Chaos repels, calm attracts. Men retreat from emotional volatility, not because they fear emotion, but because instability signals danger, unpredictability, and work without reward. But grounded energy, it signals safety. It signals strength. It signals a woman who knows her value so deeply that she refuses to lose herself in the process of loving someone else. When you stay grounded, you stop negotiating your standards every time he disappoints you. You stop collapsing the moment he pulls away. You stop internalizing his distance as your failure. You stop giving emotional rewards to inconsistent behavior. Instead, you let your calm speak for you. Because a grounded woman does not chase, she observes. She does not argue endlessly. She states her truth and falls silent. She does not cling when a man withdraws. She gives space without fear. She does not panic at uncertainty. She trusts that clarity comes through behavior, not promises. A man respects a woman whose emotional world does not crumble under pressure because she becomes the kind of person he cannot shake, distract, or destabilize. She becomes a mirror that reflects his own flaws. When he is inconsistent, she does not explode. She steps back and lets him reveal whether he is capable of maturity. When he tests boundaries, she does not fold. She reinforces them. When he shows emotional immaturity, she does not match it. She rises above it. And this frustrates the wrong men and awakens the right ones. The man who is not ready for accountability will call your groundedness cold, difficult, or too strong because he cannot manipulate it. But the man who is ready for something real will feel challenged, awakened, and motivated by it. He will see you as a woman who elevates him simply by staying true to herself. Groundedness is power because it is rare. Many collapse into emotional reactivity the moment discomfort surfaces. They argue, chase, over-explain, or overgive. But grounded women understand that the moment you break your calm, you hand over your power. Men don't value loud reactions. They value steady presence. They don't value emotional chaos. They value emotional clarity. They don't value unpredictability. They value reliability. When you stay grounded, you communicate something without speaking. I do not fear losing you. I fear losing myself. And that is the mindset that shifts dynamics entirely. You move from seeking approval to protecting your peace. You move from reacting impulsively to responding intelligently. You move from emotional dependence to emotional sovereignty. Suddenly, you become the woman he thinks about long after the conversation ends. You become the woman whose silence he feels more deeply than anyone else's words. You become the woman who teaches him, through your stillness, how a real partner behaves. Groundedness also protects you from self-sabotage. When you collapse under emotional pressure, you overtext, overexplain, overthink, and overlook red flags. You attach your worth to his validation. You confuse emotional intensity with connection. You seek reassurance instead of observing behavior. But when you stay grounded, you see everything clearly. You see that a man who truly wants you will move toward you, not away from you. You see that effort is never inconsistent. You see that emotional availability is not something you beg for. You see that a man's intentions are obvious when you stop drowning in your own reactions, and this clarity becomes your foundation. A man values what stands grounded because groundedness reveals who you are without disguise. It shows confidence without arrogance. It shows vulnerability without collapse. It shows love without losing yourself. It shows strength without hardness. A grounded woman is unforgettable because she is not shaped by emotional storms. She shapes herself through discipline, self-awareness, and unwavering self-respect. And once you embody that, you no longer fear whether he stays or leaves. Because if he stays, he grows. If he leaves, he exposes his own inability to rise. Either way, you win, because your worth was never dependent on anyone's ability to handle pressure. It was built on your ability to remain whole under it. Your standards teach him how to treat you long before your words do. Because a man does not fall in love with what is said, he falls in love with what is consistently demonstrated. Boundaries, consistency, and self-respect speak louder than any speech, any argument, any pleading. When you hold to your standards, you communicate a message far beyond language. I know my worth, and I will not compromise it for anyone's convenience. A man senses this immediately, even before he can articulate it. He feels it in the way you refuse to tolerate disrespect, in the way you protect your time, in the way you carry yourself with calm authority. Standards are not restrictions, they are declarations of value. And men psychologically respond to value, not to desperation. The moment you set clear expectations and refuse to lower them, you teach him what is acceptable and what is not, without ever needing to raise your voice. Your silence becomes weighty. Your decisions become instructive. Your calm response to poor behavior signals that there are consequences, and consequences are what generate respect. Men are instinctively drawn to clarity. When a woman communicates through words alone, he may ignore, misinterpret, or manipulate. But when she communicates through standards, he has no choice but to see the truth. Every action you take, every line you draw, every limit you enforce is a lesson in how you demand to be treated. A man may test the boundaries at first, that is inevitable, but if your standards are consistent, he learns quickly that he cannot bend or manipulate you without consequences. This is not about being controlling. This is about self-respect. Men value what they have to earn, not what is handed to them freely. They respect a woman who does not compromise her principles for comfort, convenience, or fear of losing him. Your standards become a mirror reflecting not just your expectations, but also his integrity, maturity, and willingness to rise. When he sees a woman who will not tolerate inconsistency, he either grows into the level required or he shows that he is not the man capable of meeting you. And either outcome is clarity, because clarity removes confusion, doubt, and wasted energy. Words can be empty, promises can be hollow, but standards are lived. They are visible in every choice you make. They are the unspoken measure of your value. They teach a man how to show up long before he hears a single explanation, because he experiences your boundaries daily. If you cancel your own priorities for him repeatedly, you teach him that your time is negotiable. If you tolerate disrespect, you teach him that your worth is optional. If you respond to inconsistency with emotional chaos, you teach him that manipulation works. But if you honor your commitments, protect your peace, enforce your limits, and refuse to chase him emotionally, you teach him that you are not a commodity to be bargained for. You are a woman whose value must be matched by effort, respect, and intention. And this transforms the dynamic entirely. A man who understands this will rise to meet your level because he recognizes that genuine connection requires mutual investment. He will bring clarity, consistency, and presence, not because you demand it, but because your standards have shown him what is necessary to be worthy of your time and attention. Male psychology is simple yet profound. A man who is not compelled to act by your standards will lose interest. A man who is compelled to rise by them will show loyalty, effort, and commitment. Your standards create a natural filter, separating men who are willing to match your level from those who are not. This is how you stop chasing. When your value is unshakable, when your boundaries are clear, when your expectations are non-negotiable, men must either align with your principles or remove themselves from your life. And in this alignment, attraction, respect, and genuine connection emerge not from pleading, not from chasing, not from insecurity, but from the undeniable magnetism of self-respect. Maintaining standards requires courage. It requires discipline to stay firm when he tests, when he withdraws, when he challenges your limits. It requires faith that love is not about scarcity or desperation, but about mutual respect and emotional maturity. It requires understanding that a man's behavior reveals his true intentions far faster than any conversation ever could. Every time you uphold your standards, you demonstrate that your value is not up for debate. You show that your presence is not a privilege granted lightly. You prove that you will not compromise yourself for temporary comfort or attention. This is the foundation of self-respect and psychological power in relationships. When a man sees this, he cannot take you for granted. He cannot manipulate your emotions without consequence. He cannot treat you as an option. He begins to understand, even subconsciously, that earning your respect, your attention, and your love requires consistent effort, maturity, and integrity. And this understanding changes everything. You are no longer chasing. You are not questioning, begging, or overextending. You are simply living your life on your terms, and men are drawn to that authenticity. Your standards teach him long before your words do, because men respond to actions, consistency, and unwavering boundaries more than any argument or declaration. When you embody this truth fully, you stop seeking approval, you stop fearing loss, and you stop compromising your worth. You become the woman who commands respect, attracts effort, and inspires genuine love without ever needing to chase it. You've hit the free plan limit for GPT-5. Responses will use another model until